Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's tropical weather outlook for August 2nd, 2026. Let's start off today by taking a look at the latest statistics on tropical cyclone activity worldwide, including the Atlantic. And this is a nice table put together by the Colorado State University. And basically what this is, it gives us a statistics breakdown on all of the stats on the Northern Hemisphere season so far. And I find this table here very interesting because it especially kind of puts into perspective the difference in activity we are seeing amongst the basins, especially with the North Atlantic right now. The latest on how we're doing, we have 2 named storms down, no hurricanes and no major hurricanes, and our ACE point value right now is only at 2.6 versus the Pacific here, which has obviously been much more active so far, with the Eastern Pacific seeing 7 named storms and the Western Pacific seeing 10 storms. But probably the most jarring difference is in the accumulated cyclone energy here. The Atlantic only seeing just under 3 ACE points, while the Eastern Pacific has already seen close to 55, and we are closing in on 160 ACE points in the Western Pacific. So the Western Pacific is already matching the threshold for hyperactivity by Atlantic standards, and we are just here on the 1st of August. But the Western Pacific tends to be much more active anyways, and again, a big reflection as to how El Nino is really shaking things up and setting the pattern for this year. Taking a look, though, at things across the Atlantic right now, here's a satellite imagery, and, well, that very low activity is more than likely going to continue here, as there's nothing really popping up right now. And, that might change. As I've been talking about for the last few days, we're going to have to watch potentially off the southeast coast here as some sort of piece of energy that will split off from a trough somewhere in the eastern Atlantic will slide back to the westward. And the models are still indicating that some sort of quick spin up might try to occur, and I'll show you what the models are showing for it today. But right now, there's not much happening. We still have quite a bit of troughiness here in the eastern half of the United States. There's clearly a weather system moving eastward, bringing some, rain to the Great Lakes and to the northeast, and that's probably going to continue to advance to the east, as well as showers and thunderstorm activity across the southeast, along Florida and the Gulf Coast, and spread out throughout the southwestern Atlantic here, while the eastern Atlantic right now still remains generally shut down from Saharan air and unfavorable conditions. Even though we are progressing now with the hurricane season, we are now in August, and climatologically, things should start to favor us a little bit more out here in the eastern MDR. Saharan air usually gradually dwindles as the month of August goes on. We're still a little bit closer to atmospheric conditions at the start of the hurricane season as we start August, and of course, we have the strong El Nino making its imprint on the atmosphere as well. A look at the Pacific too, and there's also not much happening, though you could clearly see the difference in favorability just by the amount of convective activity we have between the 2 basins, and that's something that has always been very noticeable pretty much since the start of the season, but nothing is getting going just now. We just have a bunch of messy convection spread out through the Pacific here, with the remnants of Genevieve way off to the northwest here on the top left part of the screen here, and Genevieve is going to continue to die off here as it moves on off to the northwest. Won't be any of a threat to anyone. And here's actually the latest on Genevieve right now, according to the National Hurricane Center, and let's see if this has loaded just yet. No, it is not. Well, I think the latest advisory is already out here. But anyways, Genevieve, 45 miles per hour with a minimum pressure of 1,006 millibars. And again, not going to be of any concern. And this is just going to continue to fizzle away. And we won't worry about it anymore. But nothing else showing up in terms of immediate development threats in the Eastern Pacific. Beyond that, right now, again, going back to the satellite here, it just looks like we have a bunch of messy convection. And, a lot of shear, too, as you can see by the wind direction on the satellite here. So kind of keeping a lid on things activity-wise in the Eastern Pacific as well. and taking a look at the vorticity map too to kind of see the structure of how everything is looking like. And we especially look at this map to see if there are any areas here, especially if we're looking at a low pressure. When we look at the vorticity map, we're trying to see if anything is consolidating and gaining a round shape and concentrating over one specific area. And you definitely do not see any of that happening across the Atlantic or the Pacific right now. So there is no major development chances within the next immediate at least 1 to 2 days, and probably for the next few days. But as I talked about earlier, the models, at least in the Atlantic, are beginning to uptrend or at least continue to show hints of development for the next 2 weeks. The European AI ensembles probably being among one of the most aggressive models showing development here. We have one patch of ensemble members showing one signal off the southeast coast, and as I said before, this is going to be associated with some sort of non-tropical energy that's going to slide to the westward over the next few days and maybe try to find some little bit of favorability to spin up here, although the models are still kind of iffy with it. But I'll show you what they show, especially the operational models, in just a little bit. But there's also an MDR signal as well. Maybe, eventually one of these tropical waves which move off the coast of Africa might try to fight back against unfavorable conditions and actually maybe we'll get a quick spin up out of the MDR here over the next 2 weeks. And I think that just speaks to climatology beginning to factor in and make its imprint on the Atlantic, the Eastern Atlantic, even though more than likely things will be on the unfavorable side, and that'll probably remain the case for most of this hurricane season. Climatology eventually will give a boost to these waves, and we'll eventually start to see development. More models, though, are kind of also on the other boat, as on the boat along with the European AI here too, showing development. With the regular European ensembles here also showing development off the southeast coast, something trying to get going here, and then I guess intensifies as it moves on out to sea. Although maybe as this initially develops, this will be close enough to the Carolinas, so we'll have to watch that. And then a few ensemble members here trying to show something perk up in the MDR as well. Again, a part of a sign of climatology starting to make things more favorable here in the deep tropics. And how does the GFS reflect how things are? Let me show you the GFS here. I clearly did not reset it back to what I was looking at before, but that's okay. And you can see here over the GFS over the next few days, there's definitely some signal that appears on the operational model here. You get a little bit of a piece of energy, and it tries to consolidate a little bit, but then the high pressure is too strong to where it ends up getting pushed inland. But there is a low level vortex here of some sort, and it actually closes off, interestingly enough, over land. But what I'm trying to show you is the piece of energy is there, and yes, this does line up with the signal here on both of the models off the southeast coast. So this might be something that we need to watch here over the next few days. And even with these small features this time of year, as the atmosphere slowly starts becoming more and more favorable in the Atlantic, you kind of just have to watch everything by default. And especially with these kind of features that are non-tropical, we've seen it in past instances where the models are kind of all over the place for a few days and don't properly latch onto them until maybe about 1 or 2 days before they actually end up developing. And we kind of saw that happen in the Gulf here when we had Bertha a few weeks back. So we will be watching this signal closely, and maybe we will get development here within the next week in the southwestern Atlantic, and that'll definitely put us on alert. Moving over to the eastern Pacific, though, nothing much happens in the eastern Pacific over the next week here. There are a few signals that come and go, and maybe something, towards the end of the model run here as we get beyond a week out. The GFS is now indicating that something will try to get going. But the Eastern Pacific kind of slips into a slumber a little bit as we begin the month of August. And in the end, more than likely, the Eastern Pacific will end up being active. And I'd especially imagine once we get to the end of the month and into September, we should really start to see things ramp up once again in the Eastern Pacific. But it is interesting how we are kind of sputtering along with activity here in the Eastern Pacific rather than, seeing constant waves of hurricanes developing, especially given that you would think that with the setup that the Eastern Pacific has for this year, they would be doing it, but they're not. But it looks like, regardless, maybe something will still pop up here within the next week. And taking a look at the ensembles as well, they do show some activity. It's not like the basin completely shuts down after Genevieve here, but again, most of the ensembles are not that impressive. It's not anything too crazy, but there are still some signals nonetheless, and maybe we will still get a named storm or so over the next week. But the Eastern Pacific not looking too threatening as well. And hopefully it stays that way for as long as it possibly can, but obviously we know that it won't. All right, finally, before I wrap up here, I do want to remind you that I do have my final hurricane season prediction out on Twitter. I did a live stream last night where I went over and released officially my predictions for both the Atlantic and the Pacific. But for those that didn't catch the live stream, well, first of all, you can watch the replay very easily on YouTube and watch it from start to finish to see, everything that happened. I mean, we mainly just went over what is going on in the tropics now, but I also obviously went over my predictions. But if you don't want to, watch the hour-long replay of the live stream last night, you can just head over to my Twitter page, and I have the predictions right there for you. And I also have a description as well of why I predicted and why I came up with the prediction that I did. So if you're interested in that, head on over to Twitter and just search my name up, the same one as I have here on YouTube, Danilo Evangelista. With that being said, though, that's going to wrap it up for today's Tropical Weather Outlook. I hope you guys enjoy. We will obviously be watching the East Coast and, that general area off the southwestern Atlantic to see whether or not we do get a spin up here in the next few days. If the models continue to show some sort of signals and hints, I would expect that the National Hurricane Center is probably going to highlight something at some point, but obviously we will just have to watch and see whether or not the models either continue to uptrend or just become inconsistent and eventually just drop the signal and we end up getting nothing. Still questions to be answered, but we will keep an eye out on the tropics for sure here over the next week. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. And of course, I'll be back with more this upcoming week.